Morning, guppies. It's daylight savings time, ain't it? Is this 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock? I don't know what it is, but I've had like this issue with staying asleep past like 4 a.m. since we turned the clocks forward, or is it backwards? Either way, it's daylight savings time, so thank God for seasonal depression about to be ending. Going into the freelance space, there's going to be so many hurdles and just deliberate roadblocks placed in your way. It's really hard to stay motivated in the beginning when you don't have a lot of experience and you don't have a large portfolio, and then doors are getting slammed in your face.
You're horrible!
If you're a woman, so some of the responses that I got on my last video, I had touched on a topic that essentially is about what we're going to talk to today, which is gatekeeping. Gatekeeping, the activity of controlling and usually limiting general access to something. In the photo and video world, that is basically cock blocking you so you can't get a job.
Shoot this motherfucker!
We're doing a light test, and then when I nail it...
Sharks in water.
Gatekeeping, we're not talking in the tech sense. We're talking in the sense of walking into an environment and people there that have been there before you or may have a larger audience or may have more clout or pull in the scenario, making sure that you deliberately do not have a seat at the table when there are 6 fucking chairs open. If you're a woman in the creative field, especially when it comes to directing and shooting and video editing, you know more than anything that attacks on your reputation. You could put out a fire video and motherfuckers will come on there bitching about why your manicure was done. You're just trying to look cute for the camera. And females are constantly attacked in the filmmaking industry as though that the way they look somehow makes them discreditable. I had actually reached out to a couple of female DPs to ask if they wanted to come onto the podcast or, maybe, speak on this topic. And unfortunately, the people that have held the keys to their gates now follow them on social media, so it's really hard for anybody to even speak up in the creative space when you can get blacklisted and the people that essentially bully you on set can make sure that you don't get a job. Little story time, a few years ago when I got one of my, I guess you could say quote unquote, one of my first big breaks was working for Benny Benassi for EDC. Those of you in the electronic space, Electric Daisy Carnival, like at least back then, that was where you needed to be. You just didn't have it if you weren't shooting for an artist at one of these larger festivals. Long story short, I shot the New York set, and then when we got to Vegas, there were problems with my credentials to get me into the festival. And I had a couple other artists booked on my roster, so I was basically going to be bouncing around from stage to stage, providing photo and video between a few artists that I had built relationships with. What had happened, at least in the case of Electronic Daisy Carnival, there was a festival team of photographers and video people. Now, mind you, they're some of the best photographers in the concert industry, but they were all part of a team that basically monopolized that entire festival. EDC staff had basically set a whole new rule that was going to be going into effect, that all the DJs and musicians that were on tour were no longer going to be allowed to bring in their own personal staff photographer and video people. As shooters, if you've been on tour with an artist for the last 5 years, you know the style, you know the images that need to be kicked out to fit their brand, and now suddenly these working relationships were put under strain with people being told they couldn't bring in, the people that have worked for them on their team since day one. You now had to pay the festival for the festival's photography team to supply images, or you were just shit out of luck and you weren't going to have any images to post showing your set at one of the largest festivals in the world, which was not only unfair to working freelance artists as far as video and photo people, but it screwed the DJs as well. And then you basically had to pay like some kind of tiered package with how many images or what you got out of that. So it was just basically like bullying the music artists and then making sure that all the working freelance photographers and shooters that were with the artist staff were getting screwed. And then all of that business had to specifically go to one core team of set individuals. No way around it. rumor has it that that team, the owners behind it, were trying to stay secret because they were essentially shitting on, you know, people that they worked with in the industry as well. And now I can pretty much only really speak from the concert industry, which when it comes to concert photography, that's one thing. But the electronic music scene is particularly cutthroat. People will go out of their way to make sure that you don't get a job, even if they're not up for the job. There's plenty of room for you to come in to shoot. There's plenty of other opportunities and money to be had. And for whatever reason, they just got to make sure that there's no seat for you at this table, even though the table's open. I remember when I was first starting to shoot DJs, I remember going into a club in Philly, and I think it was for like Nikki Romero or something. There was one other female photographer, a black female photographer named Crystal Spencer, and the rest of the people that were covering it for news outlets and, you know, DJ Mag or whatever. We were the only two females there, me being the lesbian and her being the black chick. We were automatically outcasted. Now, Crystal was a really outgoing person, and this is a prime example, and she was also new. Everybody that she was trying to build a rapport with, make small talk with, just, that's what they did. She had an issue with some batteries, asked anybody if they had AA batteries because her speed light had died. Nobody had batteries. Nobody had batteries. All those photographers, and not one of them had a couple extra AA batteries. Get the fuck out of here. That's how we ended up being friends, because she asked me for them, and I just gave her a whole entire set because my bag's stocked. How hard was that? And we've been really close friends ever since, but every time this story comes up, she always tells a story about how when she got into concert photography, I was literally the only person that would even talk to her backstage. And why was that? Well, because I was new there too, and didn't realize that this was, I guess, supposed to be the boys' club, and that works out in like interesting ways, because with my appearance, people don't always take a closer look. They don't listen to the tone of my voice, realize there's no Adam's apple or no facial hair. So at first glance, a quick glance, they think I'm a dude. Attitudes are one way. Later on in the night, when they realize I'm a female, that attitude changes real quick, and you can see the uncomfortable amount of tension people carry over that. I noticed as my work was kind of progressing and I was getting the hang of shooting in the dark and shooting during seizure-inducing light scenarios going off, that the better I got, the more they tried to shut me out. A photographer had posted a photo of me that he had took when I had kind of crossed swords with another photographer shooting a couple DJs on a festival, and he posted this photo in a secret photography group on Facebook, kind of calling me out, basically saying I didn't know stage etiquette, not realizing that I was brought in specifically to work with those artists. So that post kind of backfired when he didn't realize that I was going to see it and all these other people were. But when it came to getting jobs in that industry, clout definitely played more of a bigger part than it should have. You would have photographers that weren't that good that were suddenly getting jobs over people that were, and it all came down to their connection, who they knew. Somebody helped them get that job. I had this working relationship with a club in Philly, and this guy, Robbie, that worked there, prime example. We never had a beef, never had an argument, always got along. He was always hugs and how you doing, Sean? Great to see you. I go in to shoot for Wax Motif and Tommy Trash one week, and I suddenly get BCC'd on an email where this motherfucker had the audacity to go behind my back, email the artist management, and say that they had a problem with the photographer that they were bringing on staff. Shout out to Wax Motif, because when we got there and they gave us any hassles whatsoever, he pulled those people out in the hallway and was like, listen, these are my friends. When you guys weren't booking me, they were still showing up to my shows. You respect my friends. They're my guests. I've always like stuck by him. So give Wax Motif a follow. I want to say he was probably one of the first music artists besides Nervo that had stepped up and defended me in a situation where they knew it was bullshit. Why isn't the artist allowed to have their photographers with them? By the time you tour with somebody and you've been in cramped situations and flying in and out of different airports and on the road for weeks and months at a time, you develop close bonds with those people. Gatekeepers are trying to tell you to shit on your team. Like, that's not how this works. You're supposed to come up with your team.
Bruh, this is the rave wagon. Please get a view of that. Please get a view of the wagon.
Here too?
Yeah, no, that's pimpin' since pimpin' been pimpin'.
I mean, it's essentially like a silent, sneaky way of bullying people. The first piece of advice I will give to you when it comes to frustrations over dealing with gatekeeping, when you know people are specifically trying to shut you out and make sure that you don't have a seat at this table, those people that are doing this to you, they're the ones that feel most threatened about their positions. I usually walk into the scenario and try to see who's going to snob me off first. Also in Philly, I had shot a show for Rez. I knew the staff that was there. So when I walked into there, I remember overhearing as I was walking through this one girl was like, and who's the noob? As she looked at me. And she said this to the promoter that hired her. And he looked at her and he was like, you don't know who the noob is? And she was like, no. Nice bag, though. She just had a snotty attitude. And I remember hearing, oh, well, that's Sean fucking Cooper. You should probably take some notes. And he walked off. So you really got to watch who you open your mouth to. Because you never know who's who booked who. And then you might wind up talking shit to the guy that brought me on for the evening. I think it's a combination of people panicking about job security. They're a little insecure about their own talents. They're worried somebody new might come up. In the photography and video industry, there's a lot of shooters that will just shoot for free to get backstage with the DJ so they can look cool and be at the show and show off on Snapchat. I understand the necessity of trying to eliminate those people, because when you have these new photographers that are just shooting for exposure, or they're shooting to get backstage for free, that kind of that gets in the way backstage. They're an annoyance. They don't know what they're doing. They're blocking your shots. They're not wearing black backstage, so there's a lot of things that, noobs can bring into the atmosphere that are quite annoying. But unfortunately, this is something that you're going to have to learn how to deal with, how to cope with. There's almost no real handbook for how to maintain professionalism in these situations, because if you stand up for yourself, then you face the potential repercussions of being blacklisted or not getting hired for the next job. And if you're a female, I see a lot of females constantly just get attacked for their hair and their manicure when they're trying to teach a video course. It's what the fuck does any of this have to do with anything? I literally read comments on Instagram posts because a girl just switched camera from hand to hand. All of a sudden, now she doesn't know how to use it. Oh my God. they just get roasted. And then the next thing you know, their character, their body of work, everything is being attacked. Walking into new situations in, say, a festival backstage, I think it's important to know who's who. Know your place. You're the new guy, so don't step on any toes. Make sure that you're not popping your phone up when someone else is shot. You know what I mean? Don't do this when someone's about to take a shot and put your camera up. Don't be that guy that stands out front. Be courteous. There's other photo and video people that need to get their shots and do their job. So if you're the one that camps out up front and ruins everybody's shots, you are going to be the most hated person on set. When you get into a room, I would recommend reading the room and figuring out who's who. Make sure that you're introduced to everybody. Try to build some kind of rapport and small talk and get along with them, but there's going to be scenarios where people just are not going to socialize with you, and they can get pretty nasty. So I would think that the best way to combat gatekeeping would be to just put really good work out and try not to let these people get under your skin, because in my experience, the more people that have tried to shut me out of professional shooting scenarios showed me just how intimidated they were by me. So it didn't make me feel like my work wasn't good enough. It made me realize how good my work was and how much of a threat I am to take their job, which is why they're trying so hard to keep me out. Make sure that you're over-delivering. Get those shots sooner. Don't take any shortcuts, and just try to over-deliver just that extra mile, and try to stay on everybody's good side when you're just starting out. Until you have a network of backup, that can really work against you, and it can take a lot of jobs out of your pocket that you don't even know you were up for, just because somebody's pissed off that they didn't get it. A DC photographer named Doug Van Zant on that Facebook group post had posted that he was really impressed with my work, and I was embarrassing people that had been doing it for years longer than I have by how quickly I was progressing. And I was only progressing because I knew how hard that they were trying to shut me out. So that's what just helped laser tune my focus on this, because the more you try to do something to me and tell me I can't do something, I'm going to find 50 ways to prove you wrong and do it better than everybody in the room. I'm too competitive, you can't do this. He gave me props on this post, and then that's when the shit started. Next thing you know, I'm backstage and I'm getting snubbed off, and people are giving me attitudes, and I'm so all over the place. I think I repeated myself 5 times on this. Anyway, I'm Sean Cooper. You can follow me on Instagram here, or you can hit me up over on Bullshark here. I'm trying to give you guys some motivation, especially for those of you starting out that need help, and you're going to get discouraged, especially with people trying to cock block your access and block your path and show off your work. And I think at the end of the day, everybody just wants to work and get some kind of notoriety for good work. So I hope this helped you out and gave you some motivation. And like I said, don't let people make you feel like you don't deserve what you really want. Catch y'all later.
Shoot this motherfucker.